Rocket League has an absolutely huge assortment of cars to choose from, but very few actually make it onto the world stage. The irony of Rocket League is that it's actually a pretty static game. You play the same few modes, there's always some young prodigy blasting through the rlcs, your teammates are always not quite good enough, and the car meta basically never changes. It's only ever changed once with the Fennec, and there's not really any good way to predict a new meta since it largely relies on public opinion over numbers. But what if we could take a guess at what a third meta car would be like? To help us narrow things down, it might help to figure out exactly what does and doesn't make a car meta, and go from there. So let's go. Before we do though, I'd love to know what you guys think would make a solid meta choice. Maybe if you have a real life equivalent you can think of. Let me know in the comments. Right out of the gate, it has to be a clean and simple design. Time and time again, cars have been released that have simply been way too noisy for their own good. When you're playing a game, you don't want to be distracted by your own car, which is why as players progress, they tend to ditch a lot of the optional cosmetic items. So any car that has too much going on is simply not going to cut it. One thing it obviously can't be is similar to the Octane. The idea of beating the Octane directly at its own game is absurd, and has already not worked on several occasions. The reason that the Fennec worked at all was because it's not like the Octane, so any new meta car shouldn't be based on what we have already. This next one is a little ironic, but looking at the rlcs, there's a decent chance that a new meta car will have to share the Octane's hitbox, so it would have to both not be and also be an Octane, which certainly makes the job considerably harder unless the pros one day decide to switch to an entirely different hitbox. On the flip side, it's very likely that this car can't be any of the other existing hitboxes, save for maybe the Dominus. As much as I would love for these other cars to return to the meta, history hasn't favoured any of them, and I find it incredibly unlikely that a new car in these categories would be able to break into the space. I would love to be proved wrong on this front. We have had non-Octane cars of all sorts in the rlcs before, but in more recent times they often account for less than 1% of car choices, and practically 0% of full-time use. Most people could name someone with a unique main, but that just ultimately proves how niche they are. One thing this car would definitely have to be is free to some extent. Availability is hugely important to gaining popular traction, but being able to easily pick this car up at any point in the future would be incredibly important. It doesn't necessarily have to be 100% free. The Fennec has already proved that doesn't have to be the case, but the less barriers put up, the better. At the same time, any new meta car would have to avoid any sort of limited time availability, or events that limit the number of cars in circulation. Stuff like the Rocket Pass might be great for getting the general public to use the new car, but once the season ends, it's only going to get less and less popular over time. So it would have to be able to ramp up in the case that it becomes popular years after its initial debut. Ultimately, what makes and breaks a car's popularity is whether or not the pros actually like to use it, and that's where our ability to gauge how well a car is going to do starts and ends. Not to be deterred though, I thought I'd ask an AI image generator to come up with some designs for me. The cool thing about these images is that since it's trained off an image dataset, they all feel like they actually do belong in the game already. Speaking of belonging, I left my attempt around here somewhere. Ah, here it is. I'm gonna be honest, I think I nailed this. I did ask my community whether they thought the car meta could change at all within the next couple years, and they voted overwhelmingly no, and I'm inclined to agree with them. But only time will tell. Who knows what the future holds.